Today we are going to do something specific. We are going to take the physics and mathematics that make Bluetooth work and actually work through them. Not metaphors, not hand-waving. The real equations, deconstructed, piece by piece, until they make intuitive sense. We are going from the electromagnetic wave itself, oscillating at 2.4 gigahertz, through signal attenuation, adaptive frequency hopping, phase-based ranging, and the hard theoretical ceiling on wireless data. 5 layers of physics. All of it grounded in math you can follow. Let's consider this animation for a second. What you're looking at is the equation that describes how Bluetooth locates your earbuds in space, down to 10 centimeters, without a camera, without GPS. This is phase-based ranging. And by the end of this video, every symbol in that equation will make complete sense to you. This is what Bluetooth 6.0 actually is. Not a cable replacement anymore. A ranging system. A radar in your pocket. And the gap between those two things is exactly what we're here to close today. Now, you've been there. You're on a run, music pumping, and suddenly, silence. Earbuds in your ears, phone in your pocket, and it just cuts out. Or the flip side. You walk into a smart home and your phone knows exactly which room you're in, adjusts the lights, knows you're 2 meters from the speaker. No camera, no GPS, just Bluetooth. So which one is it? Fragile 90s technology or precision radar? The answer is both. And understanding why requires us to start where everything starts, with the wave itself. Everything starts with a wave. When your phone sends a Bluetooth signal, it is generating an electromagnetic wave. Not a metaphor for a wave. An actual physical oscillation of electric and magnetic fields, propagating through space at the speed of light. Let's consider this animation. Here you can see a 3-dimensional sine wave, oscillating in real time. What you're looking at is the shape of the signal itself. The electric field going up, then down, then up again, as it moves through space. Now, Bluetooth operates at 2.4 gigahertz. That number, 2.4 gigahertz, means the wave completes 2.4 billion of those full oscillations every single second. And that frequency has a direct physical consequence, because the relationship between frequency and the size of the wave is fixed. The formula is this: lambda equals c divided by f. The wavelength equals the speed of light divided by the frequency. Lambda is the Greek letter we use for wavelength. C is the speed of light, approximately 3 times 10 to the power of 8 meters per second, and f is the frequency. So if we plug in Bluetooth's 2.4 gigahertz, which is 2.4 times 10 to the power of 9 oscillations per second, and divide c by f, we get a wavelength of approximately 0.125 meters. That is 12.5 centimeters. Let's consider this diagram now. Here you can see the wave drawn to scale next to a standard smartphone. Do you see that? The wavelength of a Bluetooth signal is roughly the same length as the phone generating it. That's not a coincidence. That's an engineering constraint. The antennas inside your phone are physically sized to resonate at this frequency. Now, why does this matter? Because the moment you introduce a physical wave into the real world pushes back. Think about this analogy. Imagine you're in a stadium and someone lights a single candle at the center. The light from that candle spreads outward in all directions, in a perfect expanding sphere. Now, if you're standing 1 meter away, that sphere is small, and you're capturing a decent fraction of its surface area. But if you step back to 10 meters, that sphere is enormous, and you're now capturing a tiny, tiny fraction of the same total energy. That is exactly what happens to a Bluetooth signal, and the equation that describes it has a name: the Friis Transmission equation. Here is how it reads out. P received equals P transmitted times GT times GR times the quantity lambda divided by 4 pi d, all squared. Let's break every piece of that down. P received is the power the receiving antenna actually captures. P transmitted is how much power your phone is putting out. GT is the gain of the transmitting antenna, a measure of how directional or focused it is. GR is the same for the receiver. And then we have the term that does most of the damage, lambda over 4 pi d squared. Let's consider this part of the animation. Here you can see a sphere of energy expanding outward from the transmitter as the distance d increases. Watch what happens to the density of the energy hitting the surface as d gets larger. It drops. Fast. Not linearly. It drops with the square of the distance. That squaring is the killer. Double the distance and you don't have the received power. You cut it to 1/4. Triple the distance, 1/9. This is why Bluetooth drops out when you walk to the other room. The signal didn't stop. It just got diluted across a sphere so large that your earbuds couldn't hear it anymore. So we have a wave. We know it attenuates with distance. Now here's the next problem. We're not alone in that 2.4 gigahertz band. Your Wi-Fi router runs at 2.4 gigahertz. Your microwave oven leaks at 2.4 gigahertz. Baby monitors, wireless keyboards, wireless cameras. 2.4 gigahertz is extremely crowded. If Bluetooth just picked one frequency and stayed on it, interference would make it nearly unusable in any modern home or office. Let's consider this frequency spectrum visualization. On the x-axis, you have frequency. On the y-axis, you have signal amplitude. And look at those red blocks. Those are the interference sources. The Wi-Fi channel camping on a fixed frequency. The microwave leaking its noise across a wide swath of spectrum. Bluetooth's answer to this is elegant. It's called adaptive frequency hopping, or AFH. And the word hopping is literal. Rather than transmitting on one frequency, Bluetooth divides its 2.4 gigahertz range into 79 channels, each one about 1 megahertz wide, and it hops between them, up to 1,600 times per second. The transmitter and receiver are synchronously jumping to a new channel on a shared pseudo-random schedule that they both know in advance. Let's watch this animation. Here you can see the signal jumping. Green channels are clear, red channels are congested. The algorithm is watching in real time. When it detects that a channel is busy, that Wi-Fi owns it right now, it marks it as congested and removes it from the hopping sequence. The jump pattern adapts. This is the adaptive part of AFH. Think of it like a commuter who knows every street in a city. They're not taking the same route every time. They're watching traffic, avoiding the congested streets, finding the clear lanes. All of this happening faster than you can blink. That's your Bluetooth connection, 1,600 times a second. Now we get to the really interesting part. Because until Bluetooth 6.0, even with all of this sophistication, the frequency hopping, the smart interference avoidance, Bluetooth was still bad at answering one basic question. How far away is this thing? The old method was RSSI, Received Signal Strength Indicator. The idea was simple. The stronger the signal, the closer the device. And in theory, using the Friis equation we just saw, you could invert it and solve for distance. The problem is multipath. In the real world, your signal doesn't just travel in a straight line from phone to earbud. It bounces off the wall. It reflects off your body. It diffracts around the table. By the time multiple copies of the signal arrive at the receiver, each one having traveled a slightly different path, each one slightly delayed, the received strength is a mess. It's a superposition of reflections, not a clean reading of direct path distance. RSSI in a reflective environment is like trying to measure how far away a friend is by how loud their voice sounds in a canyon. The echoes ruin everything. So Bluetooth 6.0 introduced something fundamentally different: phase-based ranging. Here is the core idea. A wave has a phase. If you've ever watched two identical waves and noticed that one is slightly ahead of the other, shifted forward or backward, that shift is measured as a phase difference, and we call it delta phi. Now here's where it gets clever. Let's consider this animation. Here you can see two waves traveling from the transmitter to the receiver. Watch the phase shift between them, that small angular offset, as the distance changes. The phase difference changes with distance. But there's a problem. One wave, one frequency, one phase measurement. And you can't uniquely solve for distance. Because a phase shift of, say, 90 degrees could mean the device is a certain distance away, or twice that distance, or 3 times that distance. The phase repeats every full wavelength. This is called phase ambiguity. The solution? Use two frequencies. Here's the equation. D equals C times delta phi, divided by 4 pi times the quantity F2 minus F1. Let's read every piece. D is the distance we want to solve for. C is the speed of light. Delta phi is the phase difference, the angular offset between the signals as seen at the receiver. And the denominator. 4 pi times the quantity f minus 2 minus f minus 1. That's 4 pi multiplied by the difference between the two transmission frequencies. Let's consider this part of the diagram. Here you can see the two waves, one at frequency f minus 1, one at frequency f minus 2, arriving at the receiver with a measurable phase shift between them. By using two frequencies, we're essentially creating a much longer synthetic wavelength, one that is defined by the difference between f minus 1 and f minus 2, not by either frequency individually. Think of it like this. If you're measuring the length of a room with a 12-centimeter ruler, you'd have to count too many repetitions, and you'd lose track easily. But a 1-meter ruler makes it straightforward. That's exactly what using two frequencies does for the ranging problem. The synthetic wavelength is much longer, which means the ambiguity repeats less often, and the distance measurement becomes unambiguous within the range you care about. The result? Bluetooth 6.0 can now locate your earbuds to within about 10 centimeters. Not with a camera, not with GPS, with math, applied to the phase relationship between two radio waves. We've talked about waves, attenuation, hopping, and ranging. But there's one more piece of physics that quietly governs all of this: the theoretical ceiling on how much information Bluetooth can ever carry. Maybe you've asked yourself, why can't I stream lossless 8K audio over Bluetooth yet? The codecs keep getting better, the chips get faster, so what's the actual limit? The answer was written down in 1948 by Claude Shannon, and it applies just as hard today as it did then. The Shannon-Hartley theorem gives the maximum channel capacity, the absolute upper bound on how many bits per second you can reliably transmit through a channel. Here it is. C equals B times log base 2 of the quantity 1 plus S over N. Let's break it down. C is the channel capacity in bits per second. This is not what you're achieving. It's the theoretical maximum you cannot exceed. B is the bandwidth, measured in hertz. The wider the channel, the more capacity. Bluetooth channels are relatively narrow, about 1 megahertz each. S over N is the signal-to-noise ratio. S is the power of your actual signal. N is the power of the background noise. Let's consider this visualization. Here you have a bar representing your channel capacity. Watch what happens as we increase the noise N. The bar shrinks. The capacity drops. Not because anything broke, but because you're now spending more of your bit budget on error correction, on redundancy, on fighting the noise. Now here's the key intuition. That log base 2 term is the reason audio quality doesn't scale the way you might expect. Doubling the signal-to-noise ratio doesn't double the capacity. It only adds a fixed increment, 1 more bit per symbol. To double the capacity, you need to square the signal-to-noise ratio. Think of the channel as a pipe. The bandwidth B determines the diameter of the pipe, how much can physically flow through. The signal-to-noise ratio determines how clean the flow is, how much turbulence is in the pipe. Shannon's equation tells you, with brutal precision, the maximum throughput of that pipe under those conditions. And in the 2.4 gigahertz band, in your house, with Wi-Fi and microwaves and other devices all contributing noise, that pipe is not clean. The headroom between where Bluetooth operates and Shannon's theoretical limit is real, and that gap is why we still have Bluetooth audio codecs, compression, and latency trade-offs. So, let's look at what we actually took apart today. We started with a wave, 12.5 centimeters long, oscillating 2.4 billion times per second. We watched its power dilute across expanding spheres of energy, governed by an inverse square law that punishes distance mercilessly. We saw how 79 channels and 1,600 hops per second let Bluetooth dodge interference that would otherwise make it useless. We then went deep into phase-based ranging, the 6.0 feature that turns this radio link into a ruler, using the phase relationship between two frequencies to locate a device to within 10 centimeters. And we closed at the ceiling, Shannon's theorem, the hard physical limit that no engineer, no matter how clever, can ever break. Bluetooth is not magic. It's not a cable replacement. What it actually is, especially in 2026, is a continuous, real-time solution to a system of physics equations running in your pocket. Maxwell's equations are executing right now, in the chip inside your earbuds, millions of times per second. That is what I find extraordinary about this. Not that it works, but that it works the way it does. Not by escaping the laws of physics, but by being so precise in applying them that the result feels like something else entirely. This is Photon Lab, and I'll see you in the next one.